What's up, Kings fans? We're here, we're drinking beers, and we're talking about your Sacramento Kings. What up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Royal Rebounds Podcast with Calvin and Barry. Today, we are talking about one of the most consistent players on last year's Sacramento Kings, Harrison Barnes. Harrison had some early success in his career with the Golden State Warriors, setting the single-season wins record for a team. Then he went to Dallas, and ever since that point, he has been struggling to make the playoffs. Hasn't made it since then, but he's put up some really good numbers, and he's been Mr. Consistency for your Sacramento Kings. But before we jump into that topic today, I want to remind you all to make sure you guys hit that like button down below. If you would like to join the Royal family with Calvin and I, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. And if you would like to find out when we put out a new video, make sure you hit that cowbell down below. All right, Calvin, so what are we drinking today?
We're going big today. This is the Simtra Triple IPA, made with Simtra hops, of course, from Knee Deep Brewing Company out of California. We've had one of their beers on the show before. We do our own stunts here at Royal Rebounds. We drink our own beer. This is over 11%. So in 20 minutes, I don't know what Barry and I are going to be saying, but here we go.
No stump double. We might talk about the Kings making the playoffs again. Who knows? But we're going to jump right into the topic today, which is Harrison Barnes. Harrison Barnes had an incredible season last year for the Sacramento Kings, one of the best seasons of his career all around, as far as shooting percentage, not specifically points per game, but rebounds, assists. He was really consistent for the Kings, and whenever they needed a bucket, it seemed to be him. He was very aggressive, driving to the basket, getting contact, being that leader that the Kings needed at certain times. But, as I mentioned earlier, the big knock on Harrison Barnes is since he left Golden State, he has yet to make it back to the playoffs. He was the main player on that Dallas team that wasn't very good. And then he comes to the Kings. There's a lot of high hopes for him and the Kings potentially making the playoffs. And they got very close, but towards the end of the season, they seem to kind of sizzle out every single year. This past year for Harrison Barnes, he only played 58 games, which is the lowest amount of games he's played in a season in his NBA career. I know there was only 72 games last year, but it is a big, steep decline for him. Calvin, what can we expect from Harrison next year?
Well, I think we can expect a lot of what we've already seen from Harrison. You talked about it, how consistent he's been in his career. I feel like Harrison Barnes is a very underrated player in the NBA overall. You know, I think of him as the glue guy on this team, and a lot of times when you use that phrase, people think of a guy who is not one of the better players on your team, but is a person who everyone enjoys playing with, a leader on the team, someone that is able to rally people around him and keep everybody together. And Harrison is absolutely that person, but he's a good basketball player as well. Mm-hmm. He had a tremendous season last year for the Kings. One of the most versatile players, definitely in Sacramento, if not in the entire NBA. The guy guards anywhere from 2s to 4s. He consistently matches up with people like Anthony Davis when they play the Lakers, LeBron James. He gets very difficult assignments. Plays a ton of minutes as well. He played over 36 minutes a game last year for Sacramento and started all of those 58 games that he played in. You know, he is a very, very integral part to what the Kings do. Really does it all. Good shooter, can get to the basket, get to the foul line, good free throw shooter, very solid defender, as I talked about. He's just a very important player, and like I said, I think a very underrated one. You know, to me, the biggest question for him going into this season is, are the Kings going to predominantly play a small ball lineup that's going to feature 3 guards and him at the power forward? Or are they going to play him more at the small forward, in which case you'll see a lot more of Marvin Bagley, Rashawn Holmes, Tristan Thompson, and Metu in some form or combination? And I'm not really sure what the better thing is right now. I love Harrison Barnes' tenacity on defense. I love the fact that he is willing to go out there and accept the toughest assignment night in and night out, no matter the height disadvantage, no matter the size disadvantage. And he still is going to give you the 16 to 17 points offensively, very efficient scorer. He's a guy that I would be happy to have on any team if I was a part of in the NBA. So I still think I would like to see him play more of the 3 than the 4. But that's just me. I think he would be better served and would be able to give you more offensively if he wasn't having to guard those guys in the post consistently. But I think you're going to see a very similar season from him. He's a guy that, his game is aging like a fine wine.
Mm-hmm.
Gets smarter and smarter every year, knows how to use his body really well, and knows how to get to his spots on the floor to score. And he's going to play off of these guards really well, too, being a very good outside shooter.
Yeah, Harrison Barnes, consistency, versatility, and leadership are the 3 words that I would use to describe him the most. He almost shot 40% from 3 last year, shot over 80% from free throw. And as you mentioned, very consistent scorer. Harrison Barnes would fit in almost every team in the NBA. We saw a lot of interest in him towards the trade deadline and rumors, questions about whether Harrison was going to be traded. The only reason those came up is because Harrison Barnes is a wanted commodity around the NBA.
Yeah.
You didn't hear anything about him not liking Sacramento, wanting to leave, wanting to go to another team. Harrison Barnes isn't that kind of guy. He's a solid leader. He wants to lead this team to the playoffs, and he's willing to do whatever it takes, whether it's play the 3, whether it's play the 4, whether it's play the 5, which I would not want him to play. But he'd be willing to if they needed it. But I think the Kings made the right move last year in not moving him at the trade deadline. We saw in the past moving players like Shumpert. It really kills the chemistry on this team. So Harrison Barnes is not only the vocal leader, but he is a leader in the locker room, a leader in the weight room, a leader in showing these guys how to be professionals. When you have a team that's one of the youngest teams in the NBA, you need guys like Harrison Barnes that are there showing people what it takes to be a professional. He doesn't get in trouble off the court. He doesn't blow up on players or teammates or coaches. He is Mr. Consistency. He's a true professional. You can expect from him that he's going to come in. He's going to work as hard as he can every day, day and night. He's going to do his job. That is the perfect thing that I could say for Harrison Barnes, is he is going to do his job. And for the Kings, I think that Harrison Barnes is, many people would say he's an X factor for this team. But for me personally, I think that Harrison Barnes is pretty consistent. You know exactly what you're going to get from him pretty much every season. So for me, Harrison Barnes is one of the only non-question marks on this team this upcoming season.
Yeah, I would agree with that completely. And for a guy who has so much experience now in the NBA, he's still only going to be 30 years old. I realize 30 is kind of the time when everybody starts to think that your game starts to fall off after that. But we're seeing a lot of guys, LeBron and Russell Westbrook, and even Derrick Rose, who reinvented his game later on in his career. We're seeing a lot of these guys play at a really high level into their mid-30s, which means this guy's got a number of years left to do that. And I think the beauty about Harrison's situation with the Kings is he is one of the most dependable players on this team. He can go out and score 25 points in a game. He had a career high in rebounds last year, had a career high in assists last year, but at the same time, he is not the player that the Kings have to rely on to get a bucket when they need it most.
Mm-hmm.
Is he a guy that's capable of scoring in a clutch moment when they really need a bucket? Absolutely, but he is not the guy that has to do that. He knows his role really well on this team. He's here to play solid defense and be a jack of all trades on offense, sort of a Swiss Army knife type guy that is going to play really well off of these young, talented guards and provide that veteran leadership like you said. I mean, the guy has a lot of playoff experience at a young age, played on one of the greatest teams in NBA history, was a part of that culture, knows how to win. You brought it up at the beginning of this podcast, how he hasn't had that type of success since he left Golden State. That's not on him. He went to a difficult situation in Dallas where he had to be the man and put up the best numbers of his career there. Got paid big, got another good contract here in Sacramento, and, he's had trouble winning in Sacramento as well. But this team is starting to get more traction, I think. They got a good young core and a guy like him to help kind of build these guys and teach them along the way. So, we both agree he's a very, very important part of this team and a very, very important part of what their success is going to be or what their success isn't going to be. And he's been healthy, too. He always is available and always plays. So.
Yep. He's played a ton of games for the Sacramento Kings. I think a lot of fans may have some dislike towards Harrison Barnes based on the fact that he signed a large contract, 4 years, $85 million. With that comes expectations.
Yes.
So, when a guy like that, you sign him to a big deal, you have these high expectations for him, and maybe you feel like, although Harrison has got his numbers, the team hasn't achieved or hasn't done what you felt they could do. But, like I said in the Buddy Hield podcast, one of the good things that Vlade Divac did as GM of the Kings was he signed Harrison Barnes and he signed Buddy Hield to these front-loaded contracts. So HB is only making $20 million this season. He's making $18 million next season. Then he's a free agent. I think he's totally worth that. It's a very team-friendly contract and a very tradable contract if the Kings ended up in a position where they felt like they had to move him. I know there's been a lot of mentions about the guy that we haven't been talking about on the Philadelphia 76ers and potentially a Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, and maybe a first or second round pick, maybe 2 first-round picks for him. I've also heard about a potential deal with maybe Marvin Bagley and Harrison Barnes being traded over there. I know he'd be a great addition to that team, and it might be advantageous for the Sacramento Kings if they're picking up a guy like Ben Simmons to hold on to a guy like Buddy Hield, who is a better shooter than Harrison Barnes, who does space the floor a little bit better. But I, for one, am very happy to see Harrison Barnes on this team. He doesn't play above his ability. He doesn't need the ball. He doesn't need a lot of attention and a lot of recognition. Harrison Barnes is shooting about the same amount of field goal attempts a game as Buddy Hield is shooting three-pointers. And he's averaging 16 points a game, which is right along with what Buddy Hield's averaging.
Right about
so, and he's also getting boards, he's getting assists, and he's usually defending the best player on the team.
Yeah.
Maybe that will change this next year with Tyrese stepping up a little bit more, having a guy like Davion Mitchell on the court. But Harrison Barnes is really Mr. Consistency, and I think many Kings fans should be very lucky to have him on the squad.
Would you want to play a smaller lineup and have him at the 4, or would you play a more traditional lineup and have him at the 3?
I saw a lot of success from their 3-guard lineup last year, featuring Corey Joseph. I think that Davion Mitchell is a much better player than Corey Joseph at this point in his career, although Davion Mitchell is very young. But on the defensive end of the floor, I think Davion Mitchell is an upgrade over Corey Joseph. So I'd be okay with Harrison Barnes playing the 4. I don't know who's going to end up playing the 5 here, if it's going to be Rashawn Holmes, if it's going to be Marvin Bagley. We've seen in the past Luke Walton's been hesitant to have Marvin play big minutes towards the end of the game. So I could see a lineup of Tyrese Haliburton, De'Aaron Fox, Davion Mitchell, Harrison Barnes, and Rashawn Holmes ending games, and I'm cool with that.
Yeah, I think so too. That having an upgrade, like you said, defensively, that much of an upgrade in Davion Mitchell is going to have a trickle-down effect on everybody on the court. Personally, I still feel like I want to play Harrison at the 3 more than I do at the 4. But on the flip side of that, I also want to have minutes for guys like Davion Mitchell, and I want to play Haliburton and Fox together as much as I possibly can. So I wouldn't be disappointed to see that lineup. Traditionally, a smaller lineup like that is going to play really, really fast, and I think that they can, that squad. play really, really fast. But more possessions means you're going to allow more possessions defensively. We already know how much they struggled last year defensively. And I do think that this Kings team will be better defensively this year. It's hard not to be, statistically speaking. So it's a big toss-up to me. All I know is Harrison Barnes has to be on the floor. He's got to play a lot of minutes because of everything that he brings to the table on a nightly basis. So,
yeah, and not to mention, Harrison Barnes has the Luke Walton connection from being in Golden State and going on that incredible run. The best year of Harrison Barnes' career, not statistically, but as far as winning goes, Luke Walton was his coach for, what, a third of the season?
For a good portion of it.
Yeah.
Good portion. 40-something games.
Yeah. So, Harrison Barnes is a great addition to this team. The only thing I do worry about with playing him at the 4 is I feel like Harrison Barnes is a guy that's willing to do anything for the team. And sometimes that could be a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Is if, let's say there's a guy like Anthony Davis playing the 4.
Right.
Maybe I don't want Harrison Barnes guarding Anthony Davis. But if Luke Walton says, HB, I need you to guard AD on the block, can you do it? Of course he's going to say yes. He's
going to do it.
Of course he's going to do it.
And of course the flip side of that is if Harrison Barnes isn't going to guard Anthony Davis, who is?
Yes.
You know, if Anthony Davis is playing the 5, it's easy because you can have Rashawn Holmes guard him. But if they've got Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard out there, or they got Anthony Davis and some other big out there, JaVale McGee, Harrison's going to be asked to guard one of those two guys, most likely. Although I would actually prefer him to guard LeBron. But
yeah, it's tricky. The West is very, very tough,
and the Lakers are the measuring stick right now, right? They're what most people consider the best team in the West. They're just a couple years removed from a championship, so that is the who you're going to stack yourself up against. But there's a lot of big teams in the Western Conference, a lot of big inside players. So playing a small lineup is somewhat of a risk, because teams like Denver and a lot of other teams in the Western Conference, Utah, they like to go inside a lot. They like to utilize that height advantage that they have. So
yep. And if you decide that you want to move on from a guy like Harrison Barnes, who's going to play the 3? The Kings don't really have a guy that's capable, a young guy that's capable of playing small forward or power forward. If we do run the 3-guard set, maybe you can eliminate that position, but you're going to need a wing, a versatile wing sometimes. And unless they're getting a guy like Ben Simmons back in a trade for Harrison Barnes, I don't think I'm going to do it.
I would agree with that.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for paying attention to this show. Make sure you let us know down below in the comments how you feel about Harrison Barnes, what role you think he will have on this year's Sacramento Kings, and whether you think he will have another productive season, potentially leading them to the playoffs. I, for one, would be very happy to see that. I know Calvin wants to let all the haters know
we all would.
The Kings are making the playoffs next season. But thank you all for joining us with another episode. Make sure you guys hit that like button down below. If you'd like to join the Royal family, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to find out when Calvin and I put out a new video, make sure you hit that cowbell down below.
And if you got an idea for a video or a topic that you would like to hear Barry and I discuss, let's hear that too in the comments. We're open. We would love to hear from you guys.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for your support and listening. We will see you on the next one. And in the meantime, go Kings.
Go Kings.
Thanks, guys.